Hello, welcome to Screens Without the Battles, Finding Balance in a Digital World. First of all, thank you so much for being here. Before we begin, I'd like you to do something for me. If you're comfortable doing so, I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and I want you to picture a child. Picture their face, picture their smile, picture the things that make them uniquely them, their strengths, their quirks, the things they love. Now, I'd like you to picture them doing something they enjoy on a screen. Maybe it's gaming, enjoying their favourite game, or watching videos, shows, creators that they love. Perhaps they're chatting with friends or creating something of their own. Maybe they're researching a special interest or listening to music that moves them. Maybe they're just simply relaxing after a difficult day. Now, I'd like to picture what happens when it's time to turn the screen off. Perhaps it goes smoothly, or perhaps it doesn't. Maybe there's frustration, perhaps negotiation, 5 more minutes. Maybe there's arguments and tears, or anger with a complete emotional meltdown. Perhaps you find yourself saying, 5 more minutes. Time to switch it off. Please, don't make this difficult. And perhaps, if you're honest, you sometimes dread the transition yourself. Now, keep that child in your mind throughout today's talk, because that child is why we're here. Not because they love screens, most children do, but because many families are struggling to find balance. So, let me know in the chat, how many people here have ever had an argument about screens? I imagine that's all of us. How many people here, let me know in the chat, have ever wondered how much screen time is too much? Should I allow gaming? Am I being too strict, or am I not being strict enough? My name's Dr Harry Woodward. I'm a consultant paediatrician and I help children with ADHD and autism and their families to thrive. And over the years I've met thousands of families, and one thing has become very clear. Screens are rarely just about screens. Screens may provide connection, predictability, achievement, relaxation, belonging and escape, or simply a break from a world that often feels overwhelming. And today I don't want to convince you that screens are good or bad. I want to help you find balance, because the goal is not elimination, the goal is balance. And that is what today's talk is all about. So, why do screens matter so much? Because screens are now woven into almost every aspect of modern childhood. Children use technology to learn, to communicate, relax, create, socialise, explore interests, and increasingly to experience the world. Technology isn't going away, and I think that is important to acknowledge. Our children are growing up in a digital world, which means our goal cannot simply be to eliminate screens. Our goal is to help children develop a healthy relationship with technology. So, how many people here feel that parenting around screens is harder than parenting around almost anything else? Because I do hear that all the time. And I think one reason it feels so difficult is because screens are rarely about screens. When parents tell me he spends all day gaming or she never comes off her phone, I've learned to become curious, because very often the screen is meeting a need. Perhaps it provides the connection or predictability. Perhaps it provides achievement, or perhaps it provides escape. Perhaps it provides a sense of competence in a world that often feels difficult. I remember meeting one young person who spent many hours gaming. The family were understandably worried, but as we talked, it became clear that gaming was where this young person felt most successful. At school, they struggled. Socially, they felt different, but online, they had friends, status, achievement, and belonging. Understanding this completely changed the conversation, because the question was no longer, how do we stop the gaming? The question became, what needs is the gaming meeting? And I think this is enormously important, because if we remove screens without understanding what children are gaining from them, we often create conflict rather than change. Now, none of this means that all screen use is helpful. Of course not. Technology can sometimes become problematic, and we'll talk about that shortly. But before we can set limits, we first need understanding. Technology is a tool, and like any tool, its impact depends on how it is used. So if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this. Screens are rarely just about screens. They are often meeting genuine needs, and understanding those needs is the first step towards finding balance. So, introducing the confidence wheel. Over the next few minutes, we'll walk around each spoke on the wheel one step at a time. These are 8 spokes to digital balance. So let's move on to the first spoke on the screens, technology and balance confidence wheel. Understanding the digital brain, because I think one of the most important things parents can understand is this. These devices are incredibly powerful, and they have been deliberately designed to capture and hold our attention. Let me know in the chat how many people here have ever picked up your phone to quickly check one thing and then discovered that 20 minutes had somehow disappeared. I've definitely done that, absolutely. And if that happens to us as adults, imagine how much harder it can be for children. Many digital platforms are designed around rewards, notifications, likes, achievements, new content, unexpected surprises, and our brains love rewards. Every notification, every new level, every video, every message provides a small burst of dopamine. And dopamine is the brain's chemical messenger involved in motivation, reward, and learning. It helps us pay attention to things that our brains consider important. Now, this isn't inherently bad. In fact, dopamine is essential. Without it, none of us would be motivated to do very much at all. The challenge is that digital platforms are exceptionally good at stimulating these reward pathways. Infinite scrolling, autoplay, recommendations, algorithms, notifications, these features are specifically designed to keep us engaged. I often explain it to families by saying, you're not competing against the iPad. You're competing against teams of designers whose full-time job is to keep people engaged. And when we understand that, many screen battles suddenly make much more sense. I remember meeting one family who were becoming increasingly frustrated because their child appeared completely unable to stop gaming. Every transition led to conflict, arguments, tears, anger. The parents felt their child was simply being oppositional, but as we explored further, it became clear that the difficulty wasn't motivation. The difficulty was disengagement. Stopping something highly rewarding is hard for all of us, particularly when the brain is deeply absorbed. Understanding this changed the conversation. The family moved from why won't he stop to how can we help him stop? How can we support him? to stop more successfully, and that is a very different conversation. I think this is enormously important because understanding the digital brain moves us away from blame and towards problem solving. Technology is not the enemy. The digital brain is not broken, but understanding how these systems work helps us parent more effectively. So if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this. These devices are designed to capture attention, and understanding that changes everything. Which brings us to our next spoke. ADHD, autism and screens. So let's move on to the second spoke on the screens, technology and balance confidence wheel. ADHD, autism and screens. And I think this section is incredibly important because many parents tell me my child seems completely addicted to screens, or they can spend hours gaming but can't sit still for homework, or it's impossible to get them off devices. And whilst excessive screen use can sometimes be problematic, I think it is important to understand that for many neurodivergent children, screens often meet genuine needs. So let's start with ADHD. Many children with ADHD have brains that are constantly seeking interest, novelty, things that are new, challenge, reward, and stimulation. And digital technology provides all of those things because games are fast, interactive, rewarding, predictable, and exciting. And many parents find it confusing that their child struggles to concentrate in school but can spend hours gaming. I hear this all the time, but remember what we discussed earlier. ADHD is not a deficit of attention. It is difficulty regulating attention. When something is highly interesting and rewarding, many children with ADHD can become intensely focused. Sometimes we call this hyperfocused. And hyperfocus can make disengaging incredibly difficult. I remember meeting one family who described every transition away from gaming as a battle. The child wasn't trying to be difficult. They were deeply absorbed. Their brain was effectively slamming on the brakes while travelling at motorway speed, and understanding this changed everything. So the family stopped asking, why won't he stop? And started asking, how can we make stopping easier? Autistic children may experience screens differently too. For many autistic children, technology offers something enormously valuable: predictability. Online worlds often have clear rules, consistent expectations and predictable outcomes. And for children who find the real world confusing, overwhelming or unpredictable, this can feel incredibly calming. Technology may also support special interests, learning, creativity, communication and social connection. I've met many autistic young people who have formed meaningful friendships online, friendships based on shared interests, friendships that might never have developed offline. For some children, online communities can reduce loneliness and increase belonging, and that matters. However, neurodivergent children may also be particularly vulnerable to difficulties with screens, difficulty disengaging, sleep disruption, reduced physical activity, online safety risks, and increased distress when access is restricted. I think this is where many parents become frightened, and understandably so, but I would encourage you to remember this. Technology is not the enemy. The goal is not elimination. The goal is balance, and balance looks different for different children. I think becoming a parent has taught me something important. Whenever I find myself becoming worried about screens, I try to become curious before I become restrictive. So what need is this screen meeting? Is it connection? Is it relaxation? Is it a sense of achievement or escape or predictability? Because once we understand the need, we are much more likely to find solutions that actually work. So if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this. Screens often meet genuine needs for neurodivergent children, and understanding those needs is the first step towards finding balance. Which brings us on to our next spoke, benefits of technology. So let's move on to the third spoke of the Screens, Technology and Balance Confidence Wheel, benefits of technology. And I think this section is really important because so much of the conversation around screens focuses on risks, but technology also offers enormous opportunities. So I want to start with a simple question. Let me know in the chat how many people here have ever used technology to make your own life easier, whether that is online shopping, video calls, maps, online banking, research, keeping in touch with friends and family. Technology is now part of everyday life, and for many children, technology can be genuinely life-enhancing. So I've met countless children who use technology to learn, to create, communicate, connect, and to explore their interests. For some children, technology opens doors that might otherwise remain closed. I remember meeting one young person who struggled socially in school. Friendships felt difficult. Conversations felt hard. The playground felt overwhelming. But online, things were different. Online, they had found a community of people who shared their interests, people who understood them, people who accepted them. For that young person, technology reduced loneliness, it increased belonging, and that mattered enormously. Technology can also support learning. Children can access educational videos, revision resources, audiobooks, speech-to-text software, organisation tools, and information about their passions and interests. Many neurodivergent children become extraordinarily knowledgeable about topics they love, and technology can help nurture those strengths. I've also seen technology transform communication. For some autistic children and young people, digital communication feels easier than face-to-face interaction. It gives more time to think, more time to process, more control over social interaction. And technology can also promote creativity. Children create music, films and animations, artwork, coding projects, stories and businesses. I think it is important that we do not view children simply as consumers of technology. Many children are also creators and innovators, designers, problem solvers. Of course, technology is not without risks, and we'll come to those shortly, but I think it is important to acknowledge that technology itself is not the enemy. Technology is a tool, and the question is not, are screens good or bad? The question is this technology helping or harming this child? Because the answer may be different for different children, and it may be different at different times. I think becoming a parent has taught me something important. Very rarely are parenting decisions black and white. Most of the time, we are trying to find balance, and screens are no different. So, if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this. Technology is not the enemy. Used well, it enhances learning, connection, creativity, and belonging, which brings us to our next spoke, risks and warning signs. Now, whilst technology can bring many benefits, I think it is important that we also talk about risks, which brings us on to the fourth spoke on the Screens, Technology and Balance Confidence Wheel, risks and warning signs, because balance requires honesty, and the reality is that not all screen use is helpful, and sometimes technology can begin to have a negative impact on children's well-being. Let me know in the chat how many people here have ever worried that screens might be having a negative effect on your child. Again, you're not alone. I think one of the biggest challenges for parents is knowing when normal enthusiasm becomes problematic, because many children go through phases of becoming deeply interested in games, apps, or online activities, and enthusiasm alone is not necessarily a problem. Instead of focusing only on the amount of time spent on screens, I encourage families to look at the wider picture. We might be concerned if screen use is beginning to affect sleep, physical activity, school attendance, friendships, mood, family relationships, or overall well-being. For example, warning signs might include increasing conflict around screens, regular sleep disruption, a loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities, social withdrawal, a persistent irritability when not online, declining school attendance or performance, or children accessing inappropriate or unsafe content. I remember meeting one family whose evenings had become dominated by arguments about gaming. The conflict was affecting everybody. Parents felt exhausted, the child felt constantly criticised, and family relationships were suffering. But as we explored things further, it became clear that the issue wasn't simply gaming. The young person was anxious, struggling socially, and using gaming as their main coping strategy. And again, understanding this changed everything, because rather than asking how do we stop the gaming, the family began asking, what else does our child need? I think this is incredibly important. Screens often become problematic when they are the only source of connection or achievement or relaxation or enjoyment. The goal is not less screen time. The goal is more life outside the screen. I also want to briefly mention online safety. Please keep talking to your children about what they are doing online, who they are talking to, what they are seeing, and how they can seek help if something worries them. Open conversations are usually more effective than fear or surveillance alone, because children are far more likely to come to us when they feel safe rather than judged. So if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this. The question isn't whether screens are good or bad. The question is whether they are helping or harming. And that brings us to our next spoke: gaming, social media and online worlds. So let's move on to the fifth spoke on the screens, technology and balance confidence wheel: gaming, social media and online worlds. And I think this is one of the areas that causes parents the greatest anxiety. Many parents ask me, is gaming bad for my child? Should I allow social media? How much is too much? And the truth is, there isn't a simple answer, because gaming and social media can both bring benefits and risks. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat how many people here have a child who loves gaming. I thought so. Gaming can provide many positives. It's fun, a sense of achievement or mastery, problem solving, creativity, teamwork and social connection. And I've met many young people whose closest friendships have developed through gaming, particularly children who struggle socially offline. And for some children, gaming is not simply entertainment, it is their social world. And I think that it is important for parents to understand this, because if we simply remove gaming, we may unintentionally remove friendships and belonging too. However, gaming can sometimes be problematic because particularly if it becomes a child's only source of connection and identity, or if it leads to unrealistic comparisons, cyberbullying, social pressure. I often say that social media can be a little like handing children the world's largest playground and asking them to navigate it alone. Many young people describe feeling constantly connected, but not always connected in healthy ways. Likes, followers, streaks, comments, these things can begin to influence self-esteem, particularly during adolescence. I think one of the most important things parents can do is remain interested. Not intrusive, interested. Ask questions. Play games together. Watch content together. Be curious. Understand what your child enjoys online, because connection comes before limits. Because children are much more likely to talk to us about their problems if they believe we are genuinely interested in their digital world. I also think it is important to keep conversations about online safety ongoing. Not a single big conversation, but many small conversations. Ask, who are you talking to? What do you enjoy online? Has anything online ever made you feel uncomfortable? And would you tell me if something worried you? Because the internet is not going away. Our job is not simply to protect children from the digital world. Our job is to prepare them for it. So if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this. Connection comes before limits, because understanding your child's digital world is one of the most powerful protective factors you can offer. Which brings us to our next spoke, boundaries and transitions. So let's talk about spoke number 6 on the screens, technology and balance. Confidence wheel, boundaries and transitions. And I suspect this section may be the one many parents have been waiting for. Because for many families, turning screens off is when the battles begin. So let me know in the chat how many people here dread saying, it's time to turn it off. I would say most of us. And I think one of the most important things parents can understand is that stopping something highly rewarding is difficult for adults and especially for children. I know this myself. There have certainly been evenings when I've looked up from my phone or laptop and realised I've been on it for longer than I intended. And if disengaging is hard for us, imagine how hard it can be for children, particularly children with ADHD. Many screen battles occur not because children are oppositional, but because transitions are genuinely difficult. So what helps? Predictability. Children cope much better when they know what to expect. Clear routines also help, and clear expectations, and setting clear limits. For example, you might say, we'll stop after this episode. You have 20 minutes left. When the timer goes off, it's dinner time. So warnings can be incredibly helpful. 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. Visual timers can also help children see time passing, particularly children with ADHD or autism. I think another important principle is this. Whenever possible, connect before you redirect. Show interest. Ask questions. Sit alongside. Watch, play, join their world. Children are far more likely to cooperate with limits when they feel understood. I would also strongly encourage families to create predictable technology routines. For example, no devices during meals, screens off before bedtime, charging devices outside bedrooms overnight, and agreed gaming times, and wherever possible involve children in creating the rules, because children are much more likely to cooperate with boundaries they have helped create. Now, will there still be arguments? Absolutely. You are parenting human beings, but predictable routines usually reduce conflict. I think becoming a parent has taught me that consistency matters more than perfection. You do not need perfect rules, you need sustainable rules. So if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this: predictable routines reduce conflict, and children are more likely to cooperate with limits they have helped create. Which brings us to our next spoke: building digital balance. So let's move on to the seventh spoke on the screens, technology and balance confidence wheel: building digital balance. And I think this may be the most important spoke on the entire wheel, because the goal is not to eliminate technology. The goal is to help children develop a healthy relationship with technology. Let me know in the chat how many people here would like your children to grow into adults who can use technology wisely and safely. That is the goal. I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make is focusing only on reducing screen time, because if we simply remove screens without adding anything else, we create a vacuum, and vacuums rarely stay empty for long. Instead, I would encourage families to think about building a rich, balanced life, a life that includes screens but is not dominated by screens. I often ask families to think about 5 important areas: sleep, movement, learning, relationships and enjoyment. If a child is sleeping well, attending school, maintaining relationships, enjoying activities outside the screen and generally thriving, then screen use is often much less concerning. I remember meeting one family who had become increasingly worried about gaming. The child was spending several hours each day online, but when we stepped back and looked at the bigger picture, something interesting emerged. The child was sleeping well, doing well academically, maintaining friendships, playing football twice a week, spending time with family, and generally thriving. The gaming wasn't replacing life, it was part of life. For another young person, however, gaming had gradually become almost the whole of life. School attendance was falling. Sleep was disrupted, friendships had disappeared, and mood had deteriorated. The difference wasn't simply screen time, the difference was balance. I think one of the most powerful questions parents can ask is this: what do we want our family life to look like? What matters to us? Is it connection? Is it outdoor activities, family meals, creativity, friendships, shared experiences? Because technology should support family values, not replace them. I would also encourage families to think about creating screen-free moments, not as a punishment, but as opportunities for connection. Family meals, walking together, board games, reading, cooking, talking. I know from my own family life that some of our best conversations happen when nobody is looking at a screen, often in the car, on a walk, or doing something together. And perhaps that is one of the greatest gifts we can give our children: connection, because connection is one of the strongest protective factors we have. Please remember, children do not need a perfectly balanced childhood. No such thing exists. They simply need a childhood that contains enough sleep, enough movement, enough relationships, enough play, enough challenge and enough connection. So, if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this: the goal is not less screen time, the goal is more life outside the screen, because balance, not elimination, is what helps children thrive. Which brings us to our final spoke: support and practical strategies. So let's move on to the final spoke on the screens, technology and balance confidence wheel: support and practical strategies, because I know there will be some parents sitting here thinking, we've tried everything. We set limits. We've removed devices. We're still battling. If that's you, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and you have not failed. Parenting around screens is hard, very hard, because you are parenting children in a world that none of us experienced when we were growing up. There is no instruction manual, no perfect formula, and no universally correct answer. What works brilliantly for one child may be completely ineffective for another, because every child is different, every family is different, and every digital journey is different. I think one of the most helpful things parents can do is to move away from power struggles and move towards collaboration. Become curious, explore together, problem solve together, create family agreements together, review what is working, review what is not. Children are far more likely to engage with solutions that they have helped create. So, practical strategies might include creating predictable routines, using timers and warnings, keeping devices out of bedrooms overnight, building enjoyable offline activities, modelling healthy screen use ourselves, and maintaining open conversations about online experiences. I think modelling is particularly important because children learn as much from what we do as from what we say. And if I'm honest, there have certainly been times when my own children have pointed out that I have been spending too much time looking at my phone, usually with remarkable accuracy. Parenting is humbling, but perhaps that humility is helpful, because it reminds us that all of us are trying to find balance, children and adults alike. I also want to acknowledge that some children and families may need additional support, particularly if screen use is significantly affecting well-being, sleep, school attendance, or family functioning. Please seek help if you are worried. You do not need to manage this alone. And finally, please remember this. Technology is not the enemy. Connection is the antidote. So if I could leave you with one message from this section, it would be this: connection, not obsession; balance, not restriction. And that brings us to the end of our journey around the screens, technology and balance confidence wheel. So as we come towards the end of our time together today, I'd like to look back at the screens, technology and balance confidence wheel one last time. At first glance, it can feel overwhelming. 8 spokes, 8 different aspects of digital life, 8 possible places to begin. But I don't want you to leave today thinking that you need to change everything. You don't. In fact, I strongly encourage you not to try. Instead, I'd like to think again about the child you pictured at the beginning. Picture them once more. Their face, their smile, their strengths, the things that make them uniquely them. Now look at the wheel again, and without overthinking it, point to the spoke that feels most relevant to your family right now. Keep your finger there. That's your starting point. Not 8 spokes, 1. Just 1, because digital balance is not created overnight. It's created through lots of small conversations, small adjustments, small boundaries, and lots of connection. That is how families move from chaos to confidence, 1 spoke at a time. So before you leave here today, I'd like to ask one small favour. Please take out your phone and scan the QR code on the screen. When you scan the code, you'll receive my Screens Without Battles starter pack. Inside, you'll find practical tools designed to help your family create healthy digital habits. Inside the starter pack, you'll get the screens, technology and balance confidence wheel that we've used today. a family technology agreement template that you can use, a screen transition toolkit, a digital wellbeing checklist, an online safety conversation guide, and an ADHD, autism and screens guide, and practical strategies that you can begin using today. No pressure, no obligation, just support, because families don't need more guilt, they need understanding, practical tools, and hope. One final thought: if you forgot everything I've said today except one thing, I hope it's this: screens are rarely just about screens. Before we set limits, we need understanding. Before restriction, we need connection, and technology is not the enemy. Our children are not the enemy. The goal is balance. Please remember, connection comes before limits. Predictable routines reduce conflict, and children are far more likely to cooperate when they feel understood, because ultimately, our children do not simply need less screen time. They need rich, connected, meaningful lives, both online and offline. Connection, not obsession. Balance, not restriction. Thank you very much for listening. It's been a privilege to spend this time with you, and I wish you and your family every success on your journey from chaos to confidence. And I will see you in the next webinar.